I know what you're thinking. I took a Volkswagen GTI, then swiped a couple of cans of the early Porsche 911 color, Conda Green, and painted it. But actually what we have here is a visitor from Deutschland, the GTD. And the D doesn't stand for Deutschland, it stands for diesel.
Ostensibly, this is a GTI, and that gives you good news and bad news. The bad news is you drop in horsepower. You go from 200 horsepower down to 168. But the good news is you get a big bump in torque. You go from 207 to 258 foot-pounds of torque.
So really what this is about pulling power. We've already driven the Golf R, we've driven the GTI, and those are great. But this has the pulling power of the Golf R in a GTI. Power plant aside, if you dropped any GTI driver behind the wheel of this thing, they would find the exact same balanced car. But I still gotta find out what's underneath this thing.
We've already had the Volkswagen Passat diesel and the Volkswagen Jetta hybrid in here, and they have the same new rear suspension and subframe as this car, and that's the direction that Volkswagen Group is going in. Now remember, this is a Euro market only automobile, and it has a dual setting dampening system on it with the settings of soft and sport, unlike the American GTI that has a fixed dampening setting on it. Now, one of the most interesting things about this car is this leading link suspension. It's very reminiscent of what Ferdinand Porsche put on the original Volkswagens and Porsches. It's a very simple piece of pressed steel. It's very cheap to produce, and it is reliable and long-lasting. And it's really a testimony to Ferdinand Porsche's prowess as a mechanical engineer to design something that keeps coming back and keeps getting used, and it's not a 911.
So I did a round trip about 230 miles, and I got 43, 44 mpg, which is awesome. But here's the trade-off. You know, a GTI off the line, that's, you know, it's got a oomph to it. It's got a certain je ne sais quoi, shall we say, or a certain wunderbar auf Deutsch. This doesn't. But once you're at, say, 40 miles an hour and above, that's where you really have a hard time differentiating between this and a GTI. And that's the balance. Off-the-line performance versus fuel economy. Other than that, we're talking the same vehicle. So the real reason that Volkswagen has brought this car over and has lent it to us is they're trying to make a business case on it. So that begs the question, does it make sense to offer another hatchback in the lineup on this side of the Atlantic?
When you think of hatchback cars in America, you think of small, compact, good gas mileage, reliable mechanics, but you don't really think about exceptional build quality. That's where this car comes in. This car is well engineered and beautifully executed. It's way above the normal standard for what you would consider an entry-level car. Now look at this lower engine stabilizer bar, the way it's mounted to the subframe. It mounts inside the center of the subframe, but it gets to the center by going through this little square window in the perimeter of the subframe. And the measurements all the way around that square are identical. It's perfect. It's absolutely centered. There's nothing tugged or pulled to make it fit. And that's the way the whole underside of the car is built. Everything's in its place and nothing out of place. And look at this oil pan. This diesel engine has an electric heater that heats the oil and a thermal cover that keeps the heat in. You know, it gets cold in those German Alps.
Speaking of cold, then there's the little matter of money. This car in Germany is about 42,000 euro. Translated to stateside money, that's about mid-50s. Now, if this car were to come over, it probably wouldn't be anywhere near that. But I gotta ask the question, what do you get for 42,000 euro?
A machine is either made with engineering detail or it's not. Now take a look at these exhaust hangers here. They look like they're round bar stock, but they're not. They're actually hollow tubes. And if you look at the one that is directly under the center of the exhaust pipe, taking the bulk of the weight, you'll see that its wall thickness is considerably thicker than the tube that's supporting the side of the exhaust pipe. That's attention to engineering detail.
So I really spent some time pondering the concept of the GTD here in America. And as much as I'd love to tell you this is a question of torque versus horsepower, that would be complete crap. Here's why. This, like anything else in life, is a question of economics. There's a bit of a cultural shift in there as well, so follow me in this one for a minute. We Americans, we buy things by the pound. You Europeans, you guys buy things by the ounce. Exhibit A, the Ford Taurus. Exhibit B, the Golf GTD. Now break out your abacus at home because we're going to do a little bit of math. The GTI here in the States is about $25,000 US. Most of them go out with a couple of options for about $30,000. Now, add in the cost of the TDI engine and the funky suspension. Now you're talking about mid-30s. So let's make it up. $35,000 US, what can you buy for that? Volkswagen's own Audi, you can get a Mercedes, you can get a damn nice used car. So the question of bringing this car over is not whether you'd buy this, it's would you not buy those other cars? Then there's the whole question of the price of the energy that goes in the car. Over in Europe, there's a bit of a price protection built into them because the taxes on diesel are lower than the taxes on unleaded. We don't have that here in the US. Currently in the California Republic, diesel's about $4.30 a gallon. I know Europeans are saying right now, don't cry for me in Argentina. But to make matters even worse, unleaded is $3.60 a gallon. Now that does fluctuate. A couple of months ago, diesel fuel was about the same price as unleaded. But you still have the question, more for the vehicle and more for the energy, potentially more for the energy. So let's do a little bit of an experiment here. Volkswagen's a bit of an interesting case. You remember when we drove the turbo diesel manual Beetle convertible and we met Andres Valbuena, the major Volkswagen car guy. Well, what we're gonna do is you guys are gonna get in contact with me, Twitter, Facebook, website, email, YouTube, the Force, whatever. I am going to compile your thoughts on whether this car should be here, your honest thoughts. And I will share them with Andres, and I have no doubt in my mind that the man that brought over this early 911 color Golf GTD, he will go back to Wolfsburg on your behalf and be a complete and utter pest until this car is in your neighborhood.